Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to be honest with you right off the bat, the vibe in here today. It is just incredibly chill.
It is. It is a very low-stress environment today, which is nice.
Yeah, I am feeling this sort of, heavy, pleasant tiredness. You know that feeling?
Absolutely.
It is not like I need to sleep for a week exhaustion. It is more like I just ran 5 miles and now I am sitting on the couch and my legs feel like jelly, but in a really good way.
Oh, well, that pleasant tiredness is actually a perfect segue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because that is exactly the mood described in the source material we are covering today. We are looking at a specific moment in time where the energy was just, well, it was just good.
We are indeed. We are diving back into the Seth material today. Specifically, we are looking at session 354 of the Early Sessions, Book 8.
A truly fascinating entry, I have to say.
And just to set the timeline for everyone, this was recorded on July 19, 1967.
Right?
It was a Wednesday night, roughly 9:50 p.m.
So just picture that. Midweek, late evening, summer of 67.
Exactly. And before we get into the heavy stuff, and we do have some heavy stuff today about how your anxiety might literally be stealing your lunch money, we need to get the housekeeping out of the way.
Right, of course. A mandatory disclaimer for you all tuning in. This podcast is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
And we are looking at this material courtesy of the New Awareness Network.
Yes.
So let's talk about the mood of the room in 1967. The notes say Jane, the woman who speaks for Seth, and her husband Rob were feeling this pleasant tiredness.
It is really significant because Jane had been battling some pretty intense physical symptoms for a while leading up to this.
Right.
The notes actually state that she felt very well indeed, the best she has been in many months.
That is a massive deal. I mean, if you have been following the saga of these sessions, you know Jane's health was an absolute roller coaster.
It was very up and down.
So catching her on a best-in-months day is like seeing the sun finally come out after a solid week of rain.
It changes the entire tenor of the session, honestly. Seth is not scolding them. He is explaining why things are going right for a change. He is analyzing the actual mechanics of a win.
And that is exactly what I want to dig into first. The mechanics.
Okay.
Because Seth says something early on about how symptoms disappear that just, well, it felt totally counterintuitive to me.
You mean the discussion about the blocks?
Yeah, he talks about blocks of symptoms.
Right. So the quote is, the symptoms are released in blocks as blocks of inner associations, negative associations drop away and are cleared.
Okay, so let's pause there for a second.
Sure.
Because when I think of healing or even just getting over a bad habit, I think of it as a slope.
A gradual progression.
Yeah, exactly. Every day you get 1% better. It is linear.
That is definitely the standard Western view of progress. It is a gradient.
Right. But Seth is saying what? That it is chunky.
Chunky is a good word for it, actually. He is saying it is structural. Think about how we form beliefs or fears in the first place. We do not just have one isolated negative thought. We have a cluster of them. A block of associations.
Give me an example of that.
Well, let's say you have anxiety about your job.
Sure.
It is not just, I hate my boss. It is a web. It is, I am not good enough, which is connected to, we do not have enough money, which is connected to, my father was always critical.
Yep.
That entire web is a block of association.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see. It is a tangled knot.
Exactly. And because the mental state creates the physical state in Seth's view, that knot of anxiety manifests physically as a block of symptoms.
Like what?
Maybe it is a stomachache, a recurring headache, and insomnia all tied together by that one root block.
So when you say they release in blocks,
it means you do not just cure the headache on Tuesday and the insomnia on Friday. You untie the mental knot, you clear those core associations, and the entire block of symptoms drops away all at once.
that sounds honestly kind of scary.
Why scary?
Well, the suddenness of it. If it is not gradual, it feels like the floor just dropping out from under you.
It can cause some disorientation, yes. But think of it like cleaning out a really messy closet.
Right.
You do not pick up one sock at a time and walk it to the laundry. Sometimes you have to grab a whole box of junk and just haul it out to the trash in one go. The space clears instantly, but it requires a big movement.
So if you are listening to this right now and you feel totally stuck, like nothing is happening despite all your work, and then suddenly, boom, you wake up and feel completely different, That is this mechanism.
That is exactly the block releasing. It explains the plateau effect perfectly.
Right.
You might feel like you are doing all this inner work and seeing zero external results, and then practically overnight, a massive shift occurs. It is because the inner associations finally gave way.
I guess that is incredibly comforting, actually. It means the work is happening underground.
Precisely. It is happening deep in the psyche. The physical body is just the last place to get the memo.
Speaking of the physical body getting the memo, we really need to talk about the energy economy.
Ah, yes. This is, in my opinion at least, the most profound technical insight of this entire session.
This part completely blew my mind. So the context here is that Jane had been losing weight, right? She was having real trouble keeping any weight on.
Correct. And the assumption, logically, from anyone on the outside would be that she just needs to eat more, or that her metabolism is simply running too fast.
And Seth says, no, that is not it at all.
He explains that the body's actual mechanisms had been altered by her mental state. He says, proper chemical utilization was not made of the food eaten.
So she is eating the food. The food is physically in her stomach, but the body just isn't using it.
It is not using it for health. It is not using it to build tissue or store fat or create vital energy.
So where on earth is the energy going? It cannot just disappear. I mean, physics, right?
Seth gives the answer, and it's honestly chilling.
Yeah, lay it on me.
He says the energy instead had fed the nervous symptoms to such an extent that the body was starved, comparatively speaking.
Fed the nervous system.
Yes.
So let's role play this for a second so I can wrap my head around it. I eat a sandwich. That sandwich has about 500 calories.
Sure, let's say 500.
Ideally, my body takes those 500 calories and says, okay, 100 for the brain, 200 for the muscles, 200 for storage.
That would be a healthy, functioning economy.
But in this specific case, Seth is saying the anxiety, the nervous symptom steps in like a mobster and says, I will be taking that, thank you.
It intercepts the shipment completely. The energy is diverted to maintain the state of high tension.
That implies that just being anxious is actual caloric work.
It absolutely is. Just think about how you feel after a severe panic attack or even just a day of really high stress at the office.
You are wiped out.
You are physically depleted. Why? You have not run a marathon. You have just been sitting at a desk.
Right.
But your muscles have been microtensing all day. Your brain has been firing constant alarm signals. Your adrenal glands are pumping cortisol. That costs real money in the body's energy economy.
So Jane was starving because her anxiety was literally eating her lunch.
Literally and metaphorically, yes. The body was starved because the nervous symptoms were incredibly gluttonous. They required massive amounts of fuel to sustain that level of panic.
That is just wild. It completely reframes the whole idea of weight loss or extreme fatigue during periods of stress. You aren't just tired, you are actively being embezzled.
Embezzlement is the perfect word for it. The resources are there in the bank, but they are being secretly stolen by the illness.
But Seth says this dynamic is finally changing for her now.
Yes. He says, this energy has been largely released and the process reversed.
So the embezzlement has stopped, the leak is plugged.
The police have arrived. The anxiety is no longer siphoning off the fuel.
So now when she eats that sandwich, the body actually gets to keep the calories.
Yes. But, and this is a really important caveat, he mentions a lag.
A lag, like a delay.
Exactly. He says the body has to recoup its losses. Even though the theft has stopped, the bank account is still basically empty. It takes time to rebuild those physical reserves.
That is such a vital point for anyone going through recovery to understand. Just because you stop the stress pattern today does not mean your body magically bounces back to normal tomorrow.
Exactly right. Matter is denser than thought. It moves much slower. You have to give the physical organism time to catch up to the new mental state.
I love that phrase. Matter is denser than thought. So we've got the internal mechanics sorted out, blocks releasing, energy returning. But Seth doesn't just stay in the abstract here. He gets incredibly domestic.
He really does. The bathroom?
The bathroom. I mean, we are talking about high-level consciousness, energy diversion, deep psychic phenomena, and then Seth is like, hey, good job painting the bathroom, Rob.
It sounds funny, I know, but it is actually crucial to the framework.
So Seth tells Rob that him taking a hand at helping with the painting, specifically the bathroom, turned the tide more quickly than otherwise.
Think about the symbolism happening there.
It is just paint, isn't it?
Is it? The bathroom is a place of cleansing. It is highly private. It is where we take care of the physical body. And Rob, the partner, is taking active, physical steps to improve that specific environment.
So it is an act of service.
It is an act of profound support. Seth is pointing out that the physical environment reflects the inner state. By cleaning up and painting the bathroom, they were physically manifesting the clearing of those internal blocks we just talked about.
It is like when you finally clean your messy bedroom and suddenly your head just feels clearer.
Exactly. It is a physical ritual. And Seth is validating that ritual. He actually says, the weight game, incidentally, should begin when the bathroom painting is completed.
That is so incredibly specific. Finish the trim, gain 5 pounds.
But it makes perfect sense if you view it as a completion of an energy cycle. The project is done, the block is fully removed. The body can now relax and receive nourishment in a clean space.
And while they have the paint cans out, Seth basically turns into an interior decorator. He starts giving out color advice.
He does. He is very specific about the color blue.
He says, blue, incidentally, is a healing color, which is why Ruburt craves it.
Ruburt being the name Seth uses to refer to Jane, for those who might be new to this specific terminology.
Right. So Jane is naturally craving the color blue. And Seth says, go with that instinct, but he tells them to put it in a very specific room.
Yes. The color blue should be added to the kitchen, by the way.
Okay, let's connect the dots here. Why the kitchen?
Well, what did we just discuss about the energy economy?
That the body was starving. That food wasn't being utilized properly.
And where is food prepared?
The kitchen.
So the kitchen is the site of the trauma, in a way. It is the place where the nourishment should be coming from, but the process hasn't been working.
And blue is the healing color.
So by putting blue in the kitchen, you are visually, subconsciously signaling to the brain, this is a place of healing now. You are quite literally cooling down the anxiety around food.
That is actually brilliant. It is like subconscious programming through home decor.
It really is. It is using the external environment to hack the internal mind. If the kitchen feels frantic or visually hot with reds or oranges, the anxiety spikes. If it is blue and soothing, the nervous system calms down, and theoretically, the digestion works better.
It is practical magic.
It is environmental psychology.
And it wasn't just the paint that was helping. Seth mentions Rob's notes. Apparently, Rob had been leaving little handwritten notes around for Jane.
Yes, Seth calls them a delight to him, meaning Jane, and notes that they are having beneficial results.
It seems like such a small, almost insignificant thing. Scribbling a note, love you, or you're doing great today.
But in the context of deep recovery, it is an absolute lifeline. Seth says Rob's changed attitude is actually part of the medicine itself. It is not just that it makes Jane feel a little bit happy, it physically alters the environment she is trying to heal in.
It goes right back to that energy economy concept. If Rob is supportive, he is adding free energy to the system. If he is stressed, hovering, or critical, he is probably draining it.
Exactly. We do not heal in a vacuum. We heal in a network of relationships. Seth even mentions that this positive dynamic is improving Rob's health too. It is a positive feedback loop.
So things are really looking up on the domestic front. The bathroom is getting painted, the kitchen is turning blue, the love notes are being written. But there was another massive milestone that happened literally the night before this session was recorded.
Ah, yes. The very first ESP class.
Yeah. Jane started teaching. She held her first class on psychic development.
Which is a historic moment if you follow the Seth legacy. Those classes eventually became legendary.
And I just love Seth's reaction to it. He sounds tickled.
He says, it was amusing to watch our friend Ruburt.
It is such a distinct personality coming through, isn't it? He's not this stoic, booming God voice from the mountaintop. He's like a amused, slightly proud uncle watching you try to ride a bike for the first time.
He observes her nervousness, her performance anxiety, but he is very encouraging about the whole endeavor.
But he is also very real with her. He doesn't say, now that you are doing spiritual work, everything will be absolutely perfect.
No, and that is a critical distinction to make. A lot of people think spiritual alignment means a life without any friction or obstacles. Seth says he cannot expect no problems with his classes. I hardly promise that.
I hardly promise that. I just love that dryness.
He is managing expectations. He is saying, you are going to have issues. People might be difficult. Logistics might fail. The rent for the space might go up. And here's the key. He promises an overall successful class arrangement over a sustained period.
It is the long game again.
It is. He says success is something Jane is personally equipped to work for and achieve.
That is deeply empowering. He is not saying, I, Seth, will magically make it work for you. He is saying, Jane, you have the inherent skills to make this work yourself.
Exactly. It puts the agency entirely back in her hands where it belongs.
And he also touches on something that I think a lot of people in this space really struggle with, the money side of things.
Yes, the financial aspect.
There is this pervasive idea that spirituality and money simply shouldn't mix. Like it paints the work. But Seth is pretty pragmatic here.
He views the classes as an excellent way for him to handle many issues which in the past have caused problems, such as the financial aspect.
So he is essentially giving her full permission to earn a living from this.
He is actively encouraging it. Financial stress is a block. It causes severe anxiety. It drains the energy economy. If teaching these classes solves that earthly problem, then it is a spiritual good. It removes a blockage.
And he makes a really interesting prediction about who will actually show up to these classes.
He says a good core group will be gathered.
And he adds, they will be drawn here.
That phrasing is very specific. Drawn, not recruited, not marketed to.
It implies a sort of magnetism.
Right. When you are authentic, when you are doing what you are equipped to do, as Seth put it, you create a resonance. You do not have to aggressively chase people down. The people who need that specific frequency just naturally show up.
It is totally the Field of Dreams logic. If you build it, they will come.
But he also gives Jane a warning, or maybe an encouragement is a better word, about her own personality. He tells her, there is no need to fear his own spontaneity now.
Why would she fear spontaneity? That seems like a good trait for a teacher.
Well, you have to remember, Jane was a very disciplined writer. She could be quite rigid in her routines. And when you are dealing with channeling and psychic phenomena, there is a very real fear of losing control or going off the deep end. Seth is telling her to just relax, to trust that her spontaneity will not lead her off a cliff.
It is safe to finally let go.
Yes, she won't misuse the privilege. She has built the foundation.
So we have got this incredibly detailed picture of a recovery in progress. The internal blocks are dropping away. The external life is taking a new shape. She is teaching. But then Rob, Jane's husband, asks the question, the exact question everyone asks when things are finally going well after a long period of darkness.
The classic, is it too good to be true question.
Yeah, he straight up asks, is it possible for these symptoms to return sometime?
It is the fear of relapse. It is the fear that this is just a lucky break, a temporary remission, and the other shoe is definitely about to drop.
And Seth's answer introduces a concept that I think is the most hopeful part of this entire deep dive today, the new plateau.
Yes. He says, I told you a new plateau would be reached, and he has reached it.
Now, usually when I hear the word plateau, I think of stalling out. Like, oh man, I hit a plateau at the gym, I can't lift any heavier. It is a negative thing.
Right, but in this context, it means a new baseline, a new foundational floor.
Explain that a bit more.
Imagine you are climbing a very steep mountain. You climb up a jagged cliff face, and it is exhausting, but then you reach a wide ledge, a flat area. If you stumble on that ledge, you do not fall all the way back down to the bottom of the mountain. You just fall on the ledge.
Oh, I see. So your new worst days are now significantly higher up than your old best days used to be.
Exactly. Seth says that from this specific plateau, Jane will not slip back for any amount of time.
He does admit there might be some slippage, though, right?
Yes, he mentions momentary slippages, but they are brief. They are not structural collapses. You just dust yourself off and stand back up on the ledge.
And then he drops this line, which I want to spend a good minute on because it struck me. He says, you will never be surprised in the same way again.
It is a profoundly deep sentence.
What does that actually mean in practice? Never be surprised in the same way.
Think about the fundamental nature of fear. Fear thrives almost entirely on the unknown. When you get sick or a symptom flares up and you do not know why it is happening, it is absolutely terrifying. It feels like a random attack from the outside universe. You are a helpless victim. You are surprised by the symptom.
But now, what has changed?
Now they understand the actual mechanism behind it. They know about the blocks of negative associations. They know about the energy economy. They know that the anxiety actively steals the food.
So the mystery is completely gone.
The ignorance is gone. Even if the stomach ache or the fatigue comes back for a day, Jane can look at it and say, oh, I know exactly what you are. You are a block of negative associations manifesting physically because I was stressed about the rent for the class space yesterday.
You can name it. You can point right at it.
And when you can name a thing, you aren't surprised in that same helpless, terrified way. The power dynamic shifts completely. You become the observer of the symptom, not just the victim of it.
That is huge. That transforms the very nature of suffering into usable data.
Correct. Seth says the core issue has been faced squarely and seen through. That is the real victory here, seeing through the illusion of the physical symptom to the mental cause beneath it.
But, and there's always a but, with these kinds of teachings, Seth doesn't just let them off the hook to celebrate. He pivots from this massive reassurance to a very strict warning.
The warning against complacency, it is very stark.
He says, do not stop your efforts, you see, until complete health has returned.
This is critical because when you reach that plateau and you feel, let's say, 80% better, the overwhelming temptation is to just stop doing the work. To say, hey, this is good enough. I can live with this minor discomfort.
Why shouldn't we say that? 80% is pretty great compared to 0%.
Seth argues that leaving a lingering group of minor symptoms is incredibly dangerous.
Dangerous how? Like they will mutate.
It leaves the back door cracked open. He says these lingering minor symptoms represent instances that could cause difficulty given the improper circumstances.
So if a massive stressor hits you out of nowhere, like a sudden death in the family or a major financial crisis, those little lingering symptoms are the exact weak points where the old severe illness will break back into the system.
Exactly. They act as a beachhead for the old destructive patterns. Seth says, complete conquest is your best insurance against any reoccurrence.
Complete conquest. That is surprisingly militant language for Seth.
It is very forceful. He is saying you have to completely clear the board. You have to pull the weeds out by the very bottom of the root, not just trim the top so the lawn looks nice. If you leave the roots, they will absolutely grow back the moment you stop paying close attention.
So the end goal isn't just feeling a bit better. The goal is complete health. 0 symptoms.
Because that is the only way to be truly safe from a relapse.
But he does give them some practical motivation for this final push, too.
Yeah.
He talks about an acceleration process.
Yes. He explains that as the big, heavy blocks of symptoms drop away, Jane naturally has greater vitality available to her on a daily basis.
The energy economy balancing out against it.
Right. She isn't spending 90% of her daily energy sustaining the illness anymore. So now she has a massive surplus, and she can take that surplus and use it to attack the remaining stubborn minor symptoms with ever-growing strength.
Oh, it is the snowball effect.
It absolutely is. The healthier you get, the easier it becomes to get even healthier. You have more physical and mental resources to fight the final stages of the battle.
So whatever you do not stop when you are winning.
Press the advantage. Use that newfound energy to finish the job once and for all.
That is actually really motivating. It turns the long tail of recovery into a positive feedback loop instead of just a miserable grind.
It is like earning compounding interest on your health. It grows exponentially if you keep investing in it.
Now, before we wrap this up, there's one last tiny detail in the session notes that I found kind of funny, just because it is so incredibly random.
Ah, yes. I know what you're going to say, Mr. Miller.
Who on earth is Mr. Miller?
We don't actually really know from this specific text, but Seth is very clear and directive about it. He says, Ruburt's Mr. Miller should definitely be contacted.
It is just such a sharp conversational turn. We were talking about complete conquest of the psyche and shifting energy economies, and then suddenly make sure you call Mr. Miller on Tuesday.
It is humorous, but it reminds us that Seth is intensely practical. He is not just floating out there in the ether dispensing poetry. He is actively helping manage Jane's day-to-day life. Paint the bathroom, eat your food, call Mr. Miller.
It completely grounds the whole session in reality. Spiritual work isn't just meditating silently on a mountain peak. Sometimes it is making a mundane phone call you have been aggressively avoiding.
Or reaching out to a business contact who can help push your project forward. It is always about taking concrete action in the physical world to match the internal changes.
So let's try to summarize the big takeaways from this session. We've covered a huge amount of ground in a short time.
Well, I would say the first big takeaway is the block theory. Healing isn't always linear. If you feel stuck, remember that inner associations release in clusters. Be patient for the block to drop, and don't panic if the shift feels sudden.
Second takeaway, the energy economy. If you are constantly exhausted or losing weight or gaining it despite your diet, look closely at your anxiety levels. Is your nervous system stealing your daily calories to fund a panic response?
Third, environment is literally therapy. Paint the bathroom if it needs it, and specifically, use color intentionally. If you have anxiety around food or nourishment, put the color blue in your kitchen. Use your visual input to calm your stomach.
Fourth, do not settle to the plateau. The plateau is a wonderful safety net, but it is not a hammock. Use that new baseline of energy to push for complete conquest. Pull the roots out.
And finally, you will never be surprised in the same way again. Once you fully understand the mechanics of your own mind and your own symptoms, you are no longer a victim. You are the operator.
That is exactly the thought I want to leave everyone with today. You are the operator. If you understand the machine, it cannot surprise you.
Absolutely. It is the ultimate form of empowerment.
Now look, we have been talking about this for quite a while, going really deep into these quotes, but we are still just scratching the surface of what Seth actually covered in these years.
We really are. There is simply no substitute for reading the original text yourself to get the full context.
If you found this discussion interesting, if you had a little aha moment about your own energy levels or your own stubborn blocks, you need to go directly to the source.
We strongly encourage you to study the Seth material books for yourself. There is so much there.
You can find this exact session, session 354, and all the other incredible early sessions at the New Awareness Network website.
That URL is sethcenter.com/the-early sessions.
Go check it out. Buy the books. Really support the publisher who does the hard work to keep this esoteric stuff available to the public.
It is an invaluable library of consciousness. It really is.
So as you head out into your week, maybe take a hard look at your kitchen. Does it need a little touch of blue?
Or maybe take a look at that one mundane task like painting the guest bathroom that you have been putting off for months. It might actually be the weird physical key to your emotional healing.
And remember, pleasant tiredness is a good thing. It means you did the work. Enjoy it. Thanks for diving in with us today.
Goodbye, everyone.